Dasgupta, who is the Assistant Director, Education at the Indirapuram Group of Institutions. Joyeeta Dasgupta is an educator of mathematics and economics, curriculum designer, teacher trainer, founder principal of a K-12 school, author, ex-journalist, serial innovator, edtech enthusiast, and a passionate disruptor of education paradigms. She is a mother, an avid reader, a travel enthusiast, and a theatre actor. Reach out if you want to relish coffee, adda, ideas and laughter. Sounds lovely, Joyeeta. Welcome. And chatting with her is Priyank Sharma, faculty ITARI. Priyank is an engineer, social worker, counselor, researcher, and an educationist. Has extensive experience in teacher training, edtech, and inclusive education. Currently, he trains IB and Cambridge board teachers at Indus Training and Research Institute. While pursuing his PhD at NIPA, he has worked with national and international organizations on strategy, operations, and product development. His research focuses on innovation and inclusion pedagogical practices. Priyank publishes widely, mentors organizations, and is an ambassador of 100, must be an acronym for something. He has been invited to speak at various institutions, including IIT Bombay and international forums, contributing significantly to education.
And we invite Anand to join us, please, because that's the format that we decided on.
Okay. Anand, please.
Okay.
And their topic is a very interesting one. Training for tiered application of teaching strategies. I think all of us agree that we have to have various tiers within the classroom, but what to reach out to, when do you decide on hindsight that was okay or not okay? How do you see failing or doing okay in a particular class and segment? Over to the three of you to dissect, disagree, argue, and come to consensus. I think you all are loud enough.
How a teacher or an education leader, after having heard all the fantastic speakers and fireside chats and fishbowl that happened, they thought, okay, so basically it sounds like we should teach our teacher 10 different techniques or 20 different frameworks or various things, right? And this way, depending upon how it goes or what happens in the future, they could pick this, they could pick that. Do you think this is the right way to think about this thing? What are your thoughts?
Okay. I think the first question probably we should ask ourselves is, and I'm coming from my experience, may not be the right voice, but I think when we say teacher, we have to ask ourselves, who is that teacher? See, whenever from the morning you heard the word teacher, we all have pictures of teacher, right? Where is that teacher located? Is it, when we are looking at that teacher, is it some private school where the teacher is standing and children with some social and cultural capital sitting in front? Or is it a teacher in some remote spaces which is teaching students who come from a very different background? Now, you might ask that, there is some elements which are common. Yes, there are some things which we need to understand. But I think unless we understand what is the context we are talking about, where is the teacher located, it is very difficult to have an answer to that. See, there are certain structures, like my PhD is on grammar of schooling. Now, if you take up any school for that matter, there are certain periods, uniforms, everybody coming in, studying, then going in the evening. There are certain formal structures which remain the same throughout. We are not questioning that. The whole discussion is revolving around what do we do inside the classroom, mostly, and some academic research, of course. So I think I will personally start with asking this question, that who is that teacher? Then the second aspect, because when I trained teachers in some rural parts in Rajasthan, what we talked about a lot about, what does rural education mean for these children? See, we say that we want to give right to education to every child, 1st to 8th grade. But what does that education mean for that child in the context? Does it mean that the child has to, after doing well in 8 grades, has to move to city to find higher education? That is the only way out, right? How do you get to higher education then? Because we are saying that, okay, till first to 8th it is free, then you have to look out for yourself. Even if you are able to percolate that quality education, what is the meaning? What is the sociological imagination of the child in the context, which you are not aware of? And when I'm training teachers at ITARI, these are Ivy and Cambridge teachers, we are talking about how in a certain context. So for example, if we say experiential learning or activity-based learning, we have a lot of learning ways. So this is the best way to teach, or play-based learning, whatever name we want to use. But is it applicable in every context? And can we combine or look out for strategies on our own? So for example, in a certain context, when time is not, the time is a constant and is something which is not in our hands, we might not be able to do experiential learning. So it may not be a suitable strategy. What I always do is you could actually do different things in the classroom. You can combine these strategies, make something of your own. What matters is what does that subject, that knowledge mean for you and your classroom.
So let me ask you here a quick question. You mentioned something which seems, I don't know, I haven't heard many people say that. I've heard nearly everybody say experiential learning is the way to teach. And you just now said it might not be the best way. Do you have...
So before I answer that question, let me start with a very small story. This was about 15 years ago. We were on a road trip from Kolkata to Shantiniketan. And on the way, there was, we stopped at a dhaba where we decided to have lunch. And when we asked the person, running the dhaba, that what do you have on your menu today? Because the menu keeps changing. So the person said, oh, you can choose whatever you want, it will taste all the same. And why was this? Because the dhaba person had fine-tuned a beautiful thought process, which was very visible on his table, is that he used to make the same curry with the same onion, ginger, lesson, etc. every single day, and just put either paneer or dal or chicken or fish, because eastern part of the country, fish and all that, but it would taste exactly the same. I don't know whether the people on that road ever came back to that dhaba or not, but this I know is something very closely linked to the topic that we are discussing today, that one size really does not fit all. When all of us were out partying yesterday night, the garment that we are wearing is not what we are wearing today. So the thought that I would like to put forward to everybody here, that the form has to fit the content. What I am trying to teach, is it science, is it formal writing, is it art? It has to fit the form I'm taking on to teach that content. So, getting back to your question, does experiential learning fit all kinds of circumstances? My answer is of course no. That cannot be, because not every content lends itself to experiential learning. But I would say a substantial amount does, but not all do.
Correct. So I'm hearing you from a social context point of view. I'm hearing you from a content point of view.
Yeah.
So can each one of you give me exactly one example? And don't ask a different question. This is the question. That experiential learning failing because of social context difference, and experiential learning failing because of content difference.
So it was not social. See, what I was saying was the time as a constraint. So, rather what I was pointing to was that experimenting with pedagogies is more important. You are free to have your own insight to that. I think as teachers, our idea is not that, okay, this is what you should do in the classroom. Our idea is to empower them that they can experiment on these pedagogies. Now coming back to his question, see, one example if I have to give of pedagogy, like one of my, I will call mentee at ITARI, she is a math teacher. Now we had long conversations with her, so I try to understand, why do you teach math? What do you think is important for this, whether you want to call it preparation of life or education as life? So she said that I see that a lot of people, are not even able to empathize with each other. So I asked her a question, that can math lead to empathy? Or is it math only for reasoning as such, which our common idea is that problem solving and reasoning is all about mathematics. Can mathematics teaching lead to empathy as such? So she went back to her drawing board and she tried to understand because for her, in this world, if she has to situate herself, empathy was important. And she was teaching mathematics. So she could combine these two and then put it in her classroom that, okay, this is what I would try to do because I see in the longer scheme of things, this is very important. So I think locating oneself is very important. Then only it gives meaning to you, your children, and the ecosystem as such.
With content, experiential learning failing is usually more a function of, I wouldn't say directly content in this case, the example that I'm about to give. It's more to do with exactly how experienced the teacher is in transacting that kind of strategy, and also the number of people you have in the classroom. If you have a 40-student classroom, and you are trying to teach a content in 20 minutes of time, experiential learning, unless you are a very, very experienced teachers, have gone through this multiple iterative times, you can completely fail. In that sense, perhaps even a lecture method, I mean, dare I say that, with supportive worksheets and stuff like that, would perhaps work better than trying to set up a unthoughtful, not well-planned system where in 20 minutes you know that you have to deliver this content, but you haven't thought out the experiential learning part completely. So when you have greater number of students, less experienced teacher, and shortage of time, I don't think experiential learning works if all of these three things are there.
And just to add one more line, somebody was telling about the teacher motivation, and we find teachers not motivated, and I will bring this point there as well, that this happens because teachers are not able to locate themselves. If there is a larger meaning attached to it, if they see what they are doing, and then it kind of percolates to their own emotions and their own ability to go back to their classroom again and again and do a wonderful job.
And I would like to pick up on that, what you just said. I feel that, and I dare say that I would probably be ruffling a lot of feathers if I say this, but truly speaking, teacher training by an outside agency, be it CBSE, be it anybody else, be it you, teacher training from anybody outside the institution, coming in, delivering a lecture, holding an orientation, simply does not work in my opinion. The only thing that works, whether it's choosing of different strategies, multi-tiered strategies, or whether it's something else, any behavioral change that Subir sir was talking about this morning, happens only with a very, very tightly knit community of people inside the institution who's tightly knit in a study circle, who are observing each other's classes, who are getting back and using the right respectful language to give each other feedback, to constantly develop a culture where feedback comes in from students, from each other, from periodic telling of each other that this semester or these 3 months, this is the technique that we are going to concentrate on. The only lasting change that can happen happens from within that community, is my opinion. Nothing else, no matter how effective, how powerful the teacher trainer, leads to lasting change. Only the community, a strong community of people, focused on the right things, in there for the long haul, led by a leader who sets periodic targets. That's the only thing, in my opinion, that works.
From here, I would like to say, yes, I agree, the community should be working, but a resource person coming and telling us new things, it really helps. And it is reiterated in different, like you say, the same wine in different bottles. So if we get it reiterated, it works.
It works as a catalyst.
Yeah, it does.
It does, and I would say a catalyst can happen in different ways. It can happen in the form of Anand, it can happen in the form of, I can't really say CBSE because I've had horrible experiences with their teacher training, but it can happen in various ways. A catalyst can happen in various ways, but lasting change cannot happen unless the community is there. Yeah.
Community learns something and then they keep on doing it,
Yeah.
reiterating it, but the change does occur. Ma'am, this I've seen, in my life, and especially in my initial years in SMS school, it was like this. We were the change makers for the whole of the city, I would say. So, this is what I feel
I agree, as a catalyst,
trust me,
definitely.
and you'll separately get your box of sweets. Thank you for watching for me. No, but that apart, coming back to the question that we sort of the topic that we're working on, right? So the thing is that you mentioned experimentation. Now that would be one of the tricks in the kitty of the teacher, right? And I just want to quickly quote an anecdote, something that I heard Ustad Zakir Hussain share, where he was talking about the geniuses, right? And he says there are so many of them. They're just amazing. और आप उनके 10 concert लगातार सुनने गए. He shares that 2 of them will be the kind that makes you happy you were born as a human being to enjoy something like this, right? 4 of them would be average, nothing spectacular. And the remaining 4 would actually be bad, to the extent that you'd say, wait a second, is this that genius that I was really looking for? Now, what he explains that, he says is that's because those geniuses allow themselves to experiment with their music. They're not here to make you feel great. They are here to play and indulge with their art form. And they will experiment in those art forms because from that what emerges is the next level of genius which you had never thought about. And then of course he ends it very sweetly. He says, वरना हर रोज आपको genius वाला performance दे देंगे तो भगवान हो जाएंगे. और हर रोज भगवान तो भगवान ही नहीं होते ना. So, and it's very true. And I think that somehow, I think I'm just trying to pick your brains on this. Like, what are your thoughts? What is it that prevents teachers from experimenting? Or what do they need to be able to go about experimenting?
So this brings me back to the community part. I would say it completely hinges on school culture. And this is an intangible that school leaders, middle leaders, the management, everybody, it's an intangible without which nothing works. So what do you mean by school culture? A school culture that makes it safe for you to fail. And failure is something that I am a very, very big proponent of. I keep saying that in our curriculum, in our teacher training, in the way we treat our children, in what we say to each other, make it safe to fail, make it even heroic to fail. Provided, of course, you have the reflection after it and you have the behavioral change after it in a supportive environment, but unless the school culture supports failure, says it's okay, you tried something, do you know why it did not work, what will you do differently, and allows that entrepreneurial, innovative spirit to flourish in the school, in the teachers, in the students. I don't think, choosing teaching strategies is something that the school will need to worry very much about because the culture itself will support it.
So again, I think the answer would be different for different teachers. I'll give an example. So, okay, I'll be as quick as possible. So, for example, in a private affordable school, I've seen teachers they have been pushed with devices. EdTech technology is coming in, and then there is a TV, and there is a tablet, and then they are asked to use that as much as possible. I'm sure some of you would have wondered, why does it happen? So you'll know that a lot of this is actually happening only because of FOMO, nothing else. The salesperson of the EdTech company will go in the school and say that if you don't take our product, we'll sell it to the school nearby you. They'll have more admissions, you take it. And that is how they start branding, that your school will be now branded as a school of this EdTech company so that you will have more admissions. So for them, it is the constraint which has come from the EdTech company or the principal because of the admissions criteria which is running in. Similar to that in an elite, I've seen in an elite private school where the lesson itself is designed by somebody else. The whole design, the plan, lesson plan, bit by bit is given to the teacher by X person and then being told that this is how you will do, and there will be somebody else who will come and monitor. So since apparently the teachers can't do it and somebody else can do a better job than the teacher who is in the classroom, they are being given that lesson plan and told that you know. So I think it is, I believe that it's sort of bizarre to say that, you know, somebody else will design and somebody else will implement. We have to empower them, right? But then where's the agency of the teacher? We keep talking about agency of the student. Where's the agency of the teacher himself or herself?
So, can I come in here with...
Yes, please.
So I want to quickly give you some examples of differentiated teacher training that have been done successfully. One is called the cafeteria approach. In a large room like this, there are 6 counters. There's a menu. What this resource person stationed here can communicate to you. A bell rings. You go there, and for 30 minutes or so, a special session is conducted. Again, the bell rings. You go to another counter. You can only go to 3 counters. So you have to choose which ones you want to go to. And this has had pretty good results. It's been tried reasonable scale. When I say scale, I mean a few tens of thousands of teachers. Second one is performance-based ways of training, which is, you know, performance indicators are pushed, are created like a ladder, so that an experienced teacher who's been there for 10, 15 years does not get the same training as another one who's just recently joined. So that's another way that has been tried out. Target-based, for example, all of you know NAS results came out some time back. So depending on the specific kind of results you got, the training will emerge from that, and teachers then contextualize what particular things they want to improve. Each teacher sets a target for the degree of improvement they want in their particular class. That is broken down into specific forms of teacher performance, behavior in the class, and that is, you know, in a progressive manner worked towards. So the process is very much determined and owned by teachers. There's a reconstruction approach wherein training is designed as being, some part of it is common to all, but a lot of it is dependent on that particular area. So in a tea garden area, you'll have different ways of, say, language teaching than in another area. And lastly, there is a co-construction approach wherein a lot of open-ended things are provided, where the answers are discussed and each teacher creates their own answer, and each teacher makes a thing called my own teaching manual. So each person has very different, typically in a training program, what is called the module, if it is exchanged between people, it doesn't matter. But in this one, you don't want your written book to go to somebody else. And that is something which has also been successfully done, especially in Kerala on fairly large scale. And lastly, on experimentation, one thing which I just want to mention briefly is that if you've heard of BRAC, which is one of the largest NGOs, they routinely bring out a failure report wherein they talk of
thank
things
you
that
so much for saying that. That's a very,
they
I oft quote it.
Yes, so they talk about what went wrong, and then that is discussed, and therefore, you know, failure gets a different perspective altogether. Everybody is, you know, typically in most schools, everybody is free to teach badly. But when it comes to teaching better, then there are so many constraints, which is very odd, you know. So I think normalizing failure in this way would really help.
I think this is the last session of the day. So all the people who are in this room and have been since morning deserve to have a Q&A session open to everybody, if the co-chairs allow it. I mean, not just Priyank and me, but everyone. No?
Yeah, because
After this is a coffee break, and I think we can...
So whoever, anyone who has no issues with having coffee and you're not interested in coffee, we could have the Q&A continue here. And those who need to have coffee because they've had way too much of pedagogy, they can step out. But then for those who wish to stay on here, then I think we can just have the Q&A. It's like a room that is a decaffeinated room.
About failure, I have a different opinion actually. Failing and actually reflection on failure is something that we have to have. But keeping failure as an option is something that cannot be tolerated. That should not be happening actually. That's failure is never an option. If failure happens, certainly we have to reflect and we have to,
I
understand.
completely disagree with you, sir. I feel all great innovations have happened because people have failed repeatedly.
If we don't
And-
see failure as an option, people will be too scared to try something.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
It does not mean that,
Yeah.
see, as school leader, what I will do is I will have systems in place where we will not let the students fail. We will not have a sink and swim approach. We will make everybody swim and cross actually, not sinking. We will not keep failure as an option. And
I think it's
keeping
not
failure
about
as an
students
option
failing.
It's not a good thing.
It's not a student failure.
So I think it's not about students failing. So we are, of
I'm
course,
talking about any failure. I mean, as a school leader, I can only think about the failure that happens at school. And whether it is teacher or student, if somebody fails, it is a failure of the system, not failure of the person. And the system should have systems in place that failures should not happen. After that also, if failures happen, of course, we can reflect, we can cover that one.
Right.
But we should not have the sink and swim approach. We should let everybody, develop capacity in everybody to swim across effectively and pass.
Agree.
That-
I think,
it's not an option.
and we probably all, at the end of it, we might all actually arrive at a point where we realize we're saying fairly similar things, but it might just be doing it. Now, here's a scenario. Help me walk through it. So, I, as a teacher in your school, come and say that I have read about this particular activity, approach, whatever. I want to try it. They, of course, gave the example in a science class. I see that I can use it in a history class. And I want to try and see how the students respond to it. They might hate it, they might love it. Will I be allowed to do it in your school?
Certainly.
And that is what I think they are also saying. So that's what I'm saying, we are all talking fairly similar things. The thing is that, I really love the immediacy with which you said certainly, right? That itself shows that you have no issues with me experimenting and finding out, and what we might find out is it doesn't work in this history lesson. Or it becomes fodder for somebody else to actually say, you know what, you tried it this way, Anand. I would have just changed that one thing, and you see it might have worked.
That's what I said, before we experiment something, there should be some kind of systems that we have to create to experiment it. It is not that we are just directly, jumping into
Sure.
something without planning it. While planning itself, we should ensure that this has to win. This has to be successful. At the same time, hearing that.
May I share an incident in my previous school? We tried to have a different kind of section base one fine day. We decided that a particular batch was suffering from the lack of good questions from the classroom, because the classroom was very starkly divided between people who were very good and people who were struggling. So next year we made it into two sections, and we decided that we would put the best teacher in the class where people were struggling. And we tried to do that, and we thought that, okay, this is an experiment which we hope, fingers crossed, will succeed. It failed miserably. It miserably failed because over the course of that year, we found that students in the so-called, which they had thought was the better section, were completely bullying the other students. Teachers were behaving towards them differently, and the social impact that had completely overwhelmed any cognitive advances that we hoped would happen. This is an experiment we could do because we were okay to fail.
No, okay to fail, experiment is okay, but when we do experimentation, we should have clear patterns and plans.
Of course,
there are also,
that's a given.
We have to have that analysis.
so I think what we are,
Again,
I think we are probably saying the same thing.
as an educator, again I'll say one thing. If we put so much emphasis on only succeeding, nobody will want to experiment and try something new.
I have one
What
more.
has worked? Let's carry on.
Because of practicals will keep happening. There will be same graphs forever. There will be same results. We have taught not to experiment so much because of the fear of failure.
failure was also by design. Like there are times I have told my students that can you find 10 different ways to fail the same thing. So I think what probably we are discussing here is that what is the context in which we are discussing failure, nothing else. I think what we are saying is probably the same thing. In different contexts it works. Like in some contexts I've told my students that you go and show me how different ways can you fail. You have to still use your brain because you want to fail but you have to take different approaches to failure. So I think it all depends.
And in science, serendipity happens because you have decided to, try different things and are okay with failing.
Trying different thing and deciding to fail are two different things. This is my disagreement, actually.
But I am asking them to fail 10 different ways. Can you show me 10 different
But
ways?
there are processes, When processes are there, it is not failure, actually. They learn from the processes.
Let's agree to disagree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Joyeeta.